everyone, welcome back to the Let's Talk live stream. My name is John, and today we're going to be talking about my personal favorite director, Quentin Tarantino. We'll talk about all of his films, all of his 4K Blu-rays, and because we're live, I'll answer any and all questions, even if they don't have to do with Quentin Tarantino, so we'll just dive right into it. So Quentin Tarantino, he burst on the scene in 1992, the same year I was born. So actually, we kind of both came on the scene in the very same year. He came on the scene with Reservoir Dogs, but that very same year, he also sold a couple of his scripts, including Natural Born Killers, which was directed by Oliver Stone, and he also wrote the script of True Romance and sold that to I don't know what studio did that. I think it was TriStar, but Tony Scott ended up directing that with Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette. And a lot of overlap too between a lot of the actors that appear in those movies appear in a lot of his movies, such as Samuel Jackson in True Romance, and then obviously his big break came in Pulp Fiction, which lost Best Picture in 1994 to Forrest Gump, which I don't know if I disagree with that, but I understand why that happened. Forrest Gump is definitely the more, the better picture winner, if that makes sense. Pulp Fiction, that's kind of the movie that made me a film fan, but, I get why people would be more inclined to watch a movie like Forrest Gump over Pulp Fiction. Forrest Gump is more feel good, it's more Americana, reaches a wider audience, whereas Pulp Fiction, it's violent. Obviously the gimp scene is a big deal for a lot of people. They're not going to want to check that out. I understand that. So it's not going to reach a wider audience, but it sure reached me, and I love that movie. So we'll start it off with the first question. Kevin L. wrote, "Hey, John, what was the first Tarantino movie you saw in theaters?" So I actually don't know for sure if I saw Kill Bill 1 and 2 in theaters or not. But then the first one I would have to say was probably Grindhouse. I saw the double feature that they did with, what was that, Planet Terror, directed by Robert Rodriguez, a buddy of Quentin Tarantino's. So the first one I have to say was probably Death Proof. Then the double, and actually that's still the last time I ever saw Planet Terror was in that, because my Blu-ray of Death Proof is just on its own. Like the certain scenes are missing from the double feature, and it's funny because in the double feature it'll tell you like, oh, missing reel here. But when you get to the actual Death Proof, you get that added back in, so it's the definitive edition of that film. So I'd have to say it was probably Death Proof. If not that, then Inglourious Basterds. But I definitely did see that. And Kevin L just asked, "Will Faith be on tomorrow's show?" Yes, she will. Actually, right before I came on here, I just finished editing tomorrow's show, so it's all ready to go. It's in the can. And Faith is back, and she should be back for the foreseeable future. We'll actually have a new segment on there that she wanted to do, that she wanted to bring to the show, called This or That. So, like, she kind of comes up like with things like, what would you prefer? Like, one that you get to keep, and the other one has to die. So, for example, on tomorrow's show, she asked, what show would you keep, The Wire or Breaking Bad? One has to go, one has to stay. So that's what she's going to be bringing to the show. It won't just be, tied to shows or movies. She might even like do food, but she wanted to bring a new aspect to the show now that she's back. So we're just going to try and make sure, obviously there'll still be some weeks where we can't line up our schedules, but it won't be like a big gap like it was this time, where she hasn't been on, I think, in 4 episodes, but she will be back on this week's show, all ready to go. I think actually this show we're doing tomorrow is one of the best that we've ever done. I think we had great energy on it, so I'm really looking forward to it, to be honest. I think you guys are going to love it, as always. I hope so. Next question was on Tell him Freddie sent you. "Hi, John. Thoughts on Savage Streets with Linda Blair?" I don't know if I remember that movie. I definitely think I've seen that movie. Because I see most of Linda Blair's stuff anytime she pops up in something, because it just fascinates me. Her career got derailed, and that's one of the big things about being a child actor, unfortunately. Especially her. She was in The Exorcist, and you hear all the stories about her needing security at all times. And I'm sure that just wrecked her childhood. And then she struggled throughout her adulthood, but she's still around. She pops up in a bunch of stuff. So I don't know if I remember that movie, Freddie, but if I don't, I'm going to have to add it to the list and definitely check it out again. And Kevin L asks, which of his films has the best soundtrack? I think it comes down to Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction. I'll give the edge to Pulp Fiction because there's a lot of songs on that soundtrack. I mean, Jackie Brown's a good soundtrack too, so what am I saying? But I think that Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction are the two best, and it introduced people like me to a lot of different songs that I probably would have never heard before if it wasn't for movies like that. Like "Son of a Preacher Man" is fantastic. If you go to Jackie Brown, I never heard of the Delphonics until I got to Jackie Brown, so I would have never even heard of them, and I love their music. So it's funny in that movie how Samuel L. Jackson brings that up, like, "Oh, you like the Delphonics?" And it's because Jackie Brown showed him that, and that's kind of like what happened to me. Basically, Jackie Brown showed me the Delphonics as well. Walking Across 110th Street is just a classic song through the opening credits of Jackie Brown. So Jackie Brown's up there too. But I think just overall, it's got to go to Pulp Fiction. That soundtrack is awesome. Like just through the opening credits. But we had a cool concept with Reservoir Dogs, how it was Billy's what was it, Big Billy's Sounds of the 70s weekend that they were doing. So he was just playing all his favorite 70s music and had it lined up through the entire film, but with a musical show, like with a music show going. So I thought that was pretty damn cool that that's something that he was able to put in his film. Super Sounds of the 70s, and then obviously Stuck in the Middle with You. Like his music really does add to it. It seems a lot like Martin Scorsese. Scorsese is known for his needle drops, but Quentin Tarantino has a lot of good ones too. And the scene actually where Harvey Keitel's like kicking that guy's ass, and they got that one funk song going. I can't think of the name of it, but from Reservoir Dogs, like that is one great needle drop in that movie. I know everyone remembers Stuck in the Middle with You, and as you should, that scene is iconic. That song is iconic, but that other scene as well. And plus, that's the first time everyone remembers Hooked on a Feeling from Guardians of the Galaxy. But the first time I heard Hooked on a Feeling was in Reservoir Dogs. So Reservoir Dogs also has a classic soundtrack, but I will give the slight edge to Pulp Fiction. Just my honest opinion. Do you think Kevin L asked this? Do you think the Inglorious Bastards 4K is worth getting? I actually don't have that, and that's because I don't think it's worth getting. Matt picked that up last year, and we kind of did a comparison, it's like compared to like what the original Blu-ray looks like and what the 4K looks like. It's weird that one is very disappointing, and actually that's what made me really worried about the Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction 4Ks coming out. Is that I didn't think Inglourious Bastard was a good 4K. Now, obviously, I think that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a great 4K, but this is also Sony. Sony also produced the film, for the most part. Before, actually, I believe this is his first film that he ever directed that wasn't produced by Miramax. He got away from the Weinstein Company. That's really what put him on the map. People don't realize that about Quentin Tarantino sometimes, is that Harvey Weinstein and him had a really good working relationship, head of Miramax. That's where they put out most of his films, Kevin Smith's films in the 90s. They had a good working relationship, but after all the stuff that went down, he went over to Sony. So Sony then obviously produced the 4K Blu-ray. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a chef's kiss, beautiful 4K, whereas Inglourious Bastards was not. So I was very worried about, the Lionsgate was putting out Reservoir Dogs. I believe they might have put up Pulp Fiction. I'm not 100% sure of that. I could just look right there. But either way, both Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction are beautiful 4Ks. Reservoir Dogs actually knocked me on my ass with how good it looked in comparison to the previous Blu-ray. Pulp Fiction was another huge jump as well. But Reservoir Dogs, like there were certain aspects of that movie when I think back to it that I never would have even noticed if it didn't come to 4K. Just the diner in the opening scene, I'm like looking at the roofing, like on the outside of the building. That all looks so good now just because of the 4K upgrade. Now, Inglourious Bastards, it's just not a big enough upgrade. I think that was just kind of one where the 4K technology just didn't line up right. Like it's not the worst looking 4K. I would say it's like comparable to like what Goodfellas 4K is, which is it's overall kind of disappointing, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just something that I feel like down the line we will get a much better scan, and a much better scan that we deserve. Very similar to like what we get with Terminator 2. How it's just a very disappointing scan. And there is hope that we can get a better scan of it, as because it seems like they want to bring it to 4K. This happened with Blu-ray. We don't really get it too often where we get an updated 4K scan already, where we have two of them floating around out there. But it can happen. It happened with Blu-ray. They tried so many times with Predator until they finally got the 4K right. Rogue 1677 is here, and he wrote, "What's going on, guys? What's up, Rogue One? Glad to have you here. We're just over here talking a little bit of Quentin Tarantino. So if you want to dive in, ask some questions, anything you want. It doesn't have to be related to Tarantino, but that's what I'll be rambling on about for about the next hour." Kevin L also asked, "What is the best performance in one of his movies?" I still think that his best performance given in his performance is the best performance given in any of his films is still Jules, played by the great Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction. He was born to play that role. Quentin Tarantino wrote him that role, and it's funny because Tarantino told him that he wrote him that role. And he didn't feel like he had to audition for it. So it's always funny. He goes in there, kind of half-assed the audition because he just believed he had the role. But then another guy, the guy who actually plays the bartender in Pulp Fiction, I'm drawing a blank on the actor's name, but he's like, "Hey, my name is Paul, and this is between y'all." That guy almost got the role of Jules. He nailed his audition, but Tarantino told the studio, "Listen, let me bring Samuel back in." He kind of thought he had the role, so let him do it again. Of course, Samuel Jackson came in. He's a world class actor, and he hit a fucking home run. And there you go. Then we get um, Jules in Pulp Fiction. I still think that that's his best role, in my opinion. Uh, well, Samuel Jackson's best role and the best role ever appeared in a Tarantino film. Now, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think Leonardo DiCaprio's performance is also world class and deserves a lot more credit. I know Brad Pitt outshined him, I guess, on paper, not in my opinion. I think Leonardo DiCaprio definitely gave a better performance, but people just really got excited that Brad Pitt gave that good of a performance. They wanted to give him the Academy Award. That they just again, the stars just don't align for Leonardo DiCaprio. He gives a 10 out of 10 performance, but somehow he gets overshadowed. Rogue One wrote, "Sure, I'm on the road to see the Dark Knight trilogy at my local theater." Oh, that's awesome, Rogue One. You've seen the whole trilogy? I've actually never done that. I have watched the whole trilogy by myself in one day, but I've never actually seen the entire trilogy on the big screen back to back to back. I don't think I've even seen two out of the three in theaters on the big screen. I've never seen Batman Begins on the big screen, so I'm definitely very jealous. That is awesome. Shamrock Balls is here, guys. David, what's up, buddy? And he wrote, "Hey, buddy," to me. How you doing, man? Thank you for being here. I hope you guys all checked out me and David's show this week. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was a lot of fun to film that, and I think the edit came out pretty good. Great show by us, I think. Hopefully, you guys got to see that. If you haven't, go on over, check that one out. It's a little bit over an hour, and we'll be back sometime to do Temple of Doom. And me and my co-host haven't talked about what we'll be doing next, but probably something to do with spooky season since we got a few more weeks of that. So spooky season, got to dive into that. Rogue 1677. My favorite Tarantino film is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's pretty high up on my list right now. Pulp Fiction's still number one. Number two, I'm really having a hard time as the years have gone on. There's two lists of me ranking Tarantino here on the channel, and I really have a hard time. I still think Reservoir Dogs is number two. Kill Bill's kind of fallen down my list a little bit, and I might move Once Upon a Time in Hollywood up to like three or four. Jackie Brown up there. Um, Death Proof's probably last, but I still love Death Proof. Still love Hateful Eight, but that's probably still a little bit low as well. Inglorious Bastards is a mixed bag for me. There's certain scenes in that movie that, like, obviously the bar scene with the three fingers thing, that whole scene is just perfect. Now, there were just other scenes. It's a little bit unbalanced. I would have liked more time with the bastards in that movie. I really think that's another one where Brad Pitt gives a great performance, but we're just cutting between two different storylines. And I feel like the second storyline with the movie theater, even though I think that's awesome, and as a huge film fan, I love to see the film itself being flammable, then bringing that up in movies. I just feel like that stuff is a little bit uneven for Inglorious Bastards, and that kind of drags the film down overall for me. But I don't think that Tarantino's put out a bad film. So for me to say like his worst film is like Death Proof, that's just because, yeah, it's just uneven. But there's still scenes in that, like Kurt Russell gives a great performance in that movie, just as good a performance as he gives in The Hateful Eight. The Hateful Eight, though, I love his performance in that. I also love the story about how when he breaks that guitar, and Jennifer Jason Leigh sees him break that guitar, and it destroys in a million pieces. That's because that guitar, that was one of a kind, worth millions of dollars, that they borrowed from a museum. Why you would do this? Why not just have the prop guitar on set if you need a guitar that looks similar to that to break? If you can get a replica, I don't know who makes these decisions, but he destroyed the real guitar instead of destroying the replica guitar, and they had to adjust. I guess somebody had to go be like, "Hey, yeah, that guitar, well, we destroyed it." That's why Jennifer Jason Leigh's reaction is so scared, is because she was like, "What the fuck? You just broke a guitar that's one of a kind." So that always blows my mind. And Shamrock Balls wrote, "Happy to be here, John. My top three Tarantinos would be Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, and Pulp Fiction." So those were all actually back to back to back. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely in all three of those. Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs are probably one, two. Jackie Brown's either three or four. I love all three of them, and those are like his LA stories. All three of those movies take place in Los Angeles at different locations. And then right after that, like, yeah, I think that's probably the peak of Quentin Tarantino. His style that people always kind of want him to go back to. And we'll never get that original style back, because right after he did Jackie Brown, took a few years off, comes back with Kill Bill Volume 1. That was supposed to be split up into that was actually originally going to be one movie, but it was too long and they separated into two movies. So in 2003, we got Volume 1. In 2004, we got Volume 2, but you can watch them sometimes in LA. They do this. I've never had it actually out here where I live in New York, maybe in the city, but not on Long Island, where you could see an edited together feature where you can actually see the whole film edited together into one. I would love to do that. I mean, obviously, it's not a big deal to get the like little recap at the beginning of Volume 2. It would be cool to see it all edited together, but that's kind of like where Quentin Tarantino kind of like, he started to go into his new style. And then once we get to like the late 2000s, he kind of went into like where he wants to rewrite history, his very new style, where he's been doing that ever since with Inglorious Bastards, Django Unchained, The Hateful Eight, and then obviously Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with the Manson stories. So, oh, here we go. Shamrock Boss also just wrote, I feel after Jackie Brown, his films became too um, comic bookish, too surreal. I agree with that, especially with Kill Bill. He started, and I get it. He's paying homage to those martial arts films, the Bruce Lee films of the 60s and 70s, the films he loves. He loves black exploitation films, and you can see a lot of that in Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. You can see that still in Kill Bill, but he was definitely, his style becomes more over exaggerated, especially in the Kill Bill movies. And that really attracted me to the Kill Bill films, was that over exaggerated stuff. And I really do love the fight scenes, obviously the crazy 80 fight scene at the very end of it. But as time has gone on, I actually do think that Kill Bill Volume 2 is the better movie once you pull back and just like look at it as a story. But yes, there is that over exaggerated stuff in that movie too, and it does become very cartoonish. But I do love the very end of Kill Bill Volume 2 when you just have the bride and the guy who basically tried to have her killed because he felt like she betrayed him. They're them just talking to each other, trying to get to know what the other one was thinking at the time. This conversation they could have had before he tried to brutally murder her, but as he says, he was angry and he over exaggerated a little bit, went just a little too far. You think you went a little too far, you tried to have her killed. So that happens, and I really enjoy that scene. Him telling the story of Superman and his love for comic books. Quentin Tarantino loves to wear his all of his feelings, all of his loves, all of his inspirations on his sleeve. He's always wanted to do that. Anything that he loves, he's going to put in his movies. He pretty much even rips them off shot for shot. But it's funny because I always thought the biggest ripoff was in True Romance, and it's not even by him. He wrote the script, but Tony Scott directed that movie, and the score to that movie is pretty much the exact same score to Badlands, which I guess I could see that being an inspiration on the movie itself. Badlands, man and woman on the run essentially from a bunch of people just trying to get as far as they can before the doors close in on them or the walls close in on them. So I get why they would use the Badlands score, but it's just funny to me. Uh, Kevin L just wrote, "Do you think he has a foot fetish?" I 100%. He can deny it all he wants, but this guy was using foot shots before anyone even called him out on it. Now he just leans right into it. I guess it's like trying to play along with the joke. But I mean, Margot Robbie, even if you take her out of a Quentin Tarantino movie, because there was a ton of those feet shots in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, she's showing her feet in pretty much all of her movie, even in Barbie. So maybe she likes to show off her feet too, or I guess people with foot fetishes are just in love with her feet. I don't really know. I don't get it. I don't really care about feet one way or the other, but I've heard from other people it's a good way to make money by selling pictures of your feet on the internet. So, I mean, I'm not above it. I definitely would. I don't think people would pay top dollar for it, but I'm also not one to, I'm not going to judge. If you can get good money for your feet, go for it. But yeah, Tarantino definitely has a foot fetish. You don't put that many shots of feet in every single one of your movies unless you're going out and looking for it, because that would never cross my mind. But I'm also not a director, so what do I know for sure? Rogue 1677 wrote, "Okay, setback. I'm not going to see a Haunting in Venice." Yeah. I wanted to actually check that out this weekend. The only thing is I definitely didn't see the second one in this trilogy because what was this? Murder on the Orient Express, Murder on, I forget what the middle one was called that came out last year, the one that they filmed during COVID, and I heard it was just atrocious. So I didn't want to see a Haunting in Venice without seeing the second one. And, it looks intriguing. I'm not a big Agatha Christie kind of person, so I'm not really too much into those novels. I do like a good murder mystery, so as long as it's done good, I'm definitely into it. Kenneth Branagh directing that and starring in that. Interested, but I'm just not something that I could get out this weekend to see. I still will eventually see it. I enjoy Kenneth Branagh. Me and Shamrock Balls, funny enough. You see, I asked him about Kenneth Branagh this past week because I've always found his whole career to be very fascinating. He's like, he started out, big Shakespeare guy, directed and starred in a bunch of his films. Not his films that he directed, but based on his plays like Henry V and all that. Then he would just pop up in roles as an actor, like Wild Wild West. He plays the villain and is over the top cheesy villain. Then he pops up in Nolan movies doing accents. So it's like he's just all over the place, famous for being married to Emma Thompson. So I've always just kind of been intrigued by his career and what he does. It just kind of seems like he does what he wants, honestly. Shamrock Balls Road. Tarantino likes a special feature. I see what you did there. Yeah, the guy's he's definitely in the feed. Tarantino, you will listen to an interview with him, you can kind of tell the guy's a little bit strange. Like, he's my favorite director and all, but he wouldn't be like my first choice to go have a beer with. He definitely feels like somebody who would overwhelm the conversation. He'd be talking the whole time. He seems a little bit jittery and a little bit like, like a little, I guess the best way to describe it would be like what a stereotypical kind of nerdy kind of guy is, but he's like a little bit overwhelming. Like every time I hear interviews with him, like there's other directors I feel like I'd want to have a beer with before I went and got a beer with Tarantino. So still love him. He's my favorite director of all time, judging from the films. But like watching him in interviews, I'd be like, I'm gonna take a little bit of a back seat on this one. Jose Sanchez Zoro, what's up, everybody? Love Tarantino. In my opinion, Pulp Fiction is still the best. Yes, he does have a foot fetish. LOL. Well, yeah, Jose, I would definitely say that Tarantino's best film is Pulp Fiction. That's the movie that made me a film fan to begin with. If I didn't see that movie, I definitely don't think I would be as big a fan of film as I am. I just really enjoy, like, from the first time I saw that nonlinear storytelling, I was blown away by it. Like, just I had to see. I watched that movie twice. The first time I ever saw it, just to try and get the whole story together in my head. Like just getting the timeline together and what everything else happened. I have seen it linearly, which it doesn't work as well. I feel like that's kind of part of the charm of Pulp Fiction. Even if all those scenes are well acted, the only flaw in Pulp Fiction is Butch's girlfriend, because she is just the worst. I really think they could have gone a better route as far as acting there. I feel bad because I've watched interviews with that actress and I absolutely love her as like a person, but she just feels miscast in a movie that nailed the casting of every character, as minor or big as they might be. It's a little bit disappointing that when you get to Pulp Fiction and you see that one character, because everything else, even in that segment, is done perfectly. Of course, I get the wires crossed with The Simpsons, who does a great spoof of the one segment in Pulp Fiction where it's like Homer and he hits the cop, and the cop looks at him, he's like, "Hey, I know you." I just quote that all the time. Jose Sanchez also wrote, "Yes, man, it's endlessly quotable." And Kevin L. asks, "Would you like to see Kill Bill Volume 3? I would love to see Kill Bill Volume 3. I don't think Tarantino's going to be the guy for it, to be honest. He doesn't seem like he's interested, and he seems like he's pretty set on making the next film, The Film Critic, or The Movie Critic, whatever he's calling it, to be his final film. He feels like he's set in stone about that. Actually, they cast what's his name, Paul Walker Hauser this week in the lead role. I really love that guy. So I heard that he got cast in the lead role of that movie, or he was in negotiations before the SAG-AFTRA strike happened. So really looking forward to that. He seems like he's committed to that. So if we're going to get a Kill Bill Volume 3, I think it would have to be him lending out the rights to it to another director that he trusts. I just think it can be done. I really feel like you got so many options sitting there. If you could bring back Uma Thurman and then bring back her own daughter, Maya Hawke, that's perfect. Maybe cast Zendaya or Zazie Beetz as the role of Vivica A. Fox's daughter character, because like that was the whole story that they set up. It'd be perfect if they did Kill Bill Volume 3. The story is just sitting there ready to be made. Obviously, Tarantino would have to give his blessing. Those are his characters. Even though obviously the way she's dressed is paying homage to Bruce Lee, and he's ripped off a lot of stuff from all those kinds of movies, he'll tell you himself. But I still think that you would have to get his blessing. Hopefully he signs off on the director, but I still really hope that some way they could figure out a way for us to get that. And Shamrock Balls wrote, he wrote a novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I listened to him being interviewed about his love for movie novelizations. A man after my own heart. Yes, I actually haven't read the novelization of that, but I heard it does fill in a lot of gaps, including Brad Pitt killing his wife. I guess they give a definitive answer on it. And that's the thing with Tarantino, is he loves to dive into like those missing gaps in the movies, even in his movies. He wanted to actually, I don't know if it's still happening, but they did say that they were going to make episodes of Bounty Law with Leonardo DiCaprio, Quentin Tarantino directing, so you can see those episodes of the show that Rick Dalton was famous for. on actual Netflix. Like I don't know what happened. I haven't heard much on that, but he wanted to do that. And I thought that would have been just the coolest thing to see. But unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if something just happened because like money didn't line up correctly. But yeah, I feel like that's where Tarantino's heart really is he wants to go into writing more, go into more TV. Like he directed, I'm pretty sure, like episodes of Star Trek. There was always those rumors he was going to direct like a Star Trek film. He directed, I think, episodes of CSI. So Tarantino's always marched to the beat of his own drum, and he's going to really do what he wants to do. And I think he's set on being done with directing. The Blue Corner wrote, "Hey, I know you. I think, yeah, that's it." The Blue Corner wrote, "You think he has that much ownership over the movies he's made, over the studios?" Well, most of his movies were signed through Miramax. I know Miramax has had issues with Kevin Smith. That's why we haven't gotten Dogma on 4K. Kevin Smith said that reason why a lot of his movies, that's why it's hard to get them on physical media from Kevin Smith, is because a lot of those issues are tied up in Harvey Weinstein and Miramax. Now, Quentin Tarantino also was signed on with Miramax. But from what I understand, is from the very beginning, Tarantino was very protective of the rights of his films. And he was so he should still, I don't know if he has the copies of like the original films or anything like that, but I know that he should at least have most of the rights. That's why he never really, for the most part, he was an indie director through and through. He made the movies he wanted to make. So I can imagine him being responsible enough to be the guy that has the rights to his films. Like, I think probably the one that might not be that is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because that was the first time where it felt like he had big studio budget money. Like, yes, some of his movies did have that, but like to have the big team behind him at Sony, it always kind of felt like that was the thing over there. And that's why it always kind of feels like it's a little bit different from the rest of his films. So yeah, I do think that he probably should have the rights to Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 if I'm taking a guess, but that would just be a guess. Elo Yours Veers wrote, "Hello, fellas. Quentin films I see. My favorite is Kill Bill. They are amazing. Unfortunately, Tarantino will not do Kill Bill 3 since he was tired. Since he was tired from the first two films, sadly. Yeah, and that's one thing I should address here about Kill Bill. Quentin Tarantino always considered Uma Thurman to be his muse. Obviously, the first time they worked together was on Pulp Fiction, and he tells basically the origin story of Kill Bill in Pulp Fiction with her character. What was it, Fox Force 5 or whatever? The bunch of the girls that were in the eventual Kill Bill. The group that worked under that one guy and everything like that. They tell the story in Kill Bill, and then once they work on Kill Bill together, Quentin Tarantino, Uma Thurman. Instead of getting a stunt driver, and Uma Thurman felt very uncomfortable. You can see the shot in the movie where she's driving the car in black and white through the woods. In real life, she hit a tree, and this could have all been avoided because Tarantino really just wanted to get the shot of Uma Thurman's face, and unfortunately, Uma Thurman didn't feel comfortable with it, and her intuition was correct. She gets in a car accident, and they didn't speak for years. Eventually, they repaired their relationship and everything like that. But Kill Bill probably is a sour spot in both Uma Thurman and Quentin Tarantino's mind now, just because of like the falling out of their personal life in that movie. But I still absolutely love Kill Bill. But yeah, I could see that being a reason why we wouldn't get Kill Bill Volume 3. Adaptive Writer wrote, I just looked up the Tarantino XX celebrating 20 years of films on Blu-ray set from 2012 for $10. Yeah, I picked it up. I don't blame you. That's a really good deal. $10 apt to have all of his films up to that point on Blu-ray. That's definitely a solid deal, especially since some of those movies haven't even gotten any new scans anyway. So you're getting the highest quality available to you in that set. Kevin out wrote, "Personally, I'm not a fan of Harvey Weinstein." Kevin, most people aren't a fan of Harvey Weinstein, I think, at this point. And if they are, I don't think they're going to say it out loud because of all the crazy shit that guy did. Hopefully, he rots in jail for the rest of his life. You know, that's the sad thing, though. He was a super producer in Hollywood. People have to remember that. So his name is wrapped up in a lot of movies, especially like 1998 when we got Saving Private Ryan. The reason why it didn't win Best Picture is because Harvey Weinstein was such a big name in Hollywood that he was able to throw his weight around and basically get Shakespeare in Love to win Best Picture. Do people talk about Shakespeare in Love? Not today, I don't think. Maybe some people out there are like, "Oh, that's a good movie," but Saving Private Ryan is one of those movies. The Normandy Beach scene to open that film is iconic, classic to this very day. People still talk about that movie, still talk about that Normandy Beach scene. And it's a shame that looking back on it, that a guy basically just politicized his way to get a Best Picture win for his studio. It's all about money. That's how it works. Unfortunately, the Oscars are always like that, where you can basically politic your way into a win. Kind of hurts the business overall, but that's just the way it is. I think they're trying to fix those issues so that doesn't happen anymore. So we don't have to always give guys makeup Oscars. That's why you can't really put all your eggs in the basket. I'm a big Oscars fan. Like personally, I like the award show. It's the only one I really get involved in. But unfortunately, the awards do not tell the whole story. There's plenty of Best Picture wins that don't deserve it, and plenty of Academy Award wins in general that went to a lot of films that didn't deserve it. So that's the only thing that kind of drags that down. And Harvey Weinstein is always going to drag things down when his name's happened. Don't think too many people. Yeah, Blue Corner. So actually diving back into Tarantino, my what do you guys think about his recent films? Did you guys enjoy The Hateful Eight? Because I was a big fan of that movie. I don't think it got enough love when it first came out. It kind of got swept under the table. I feel like now it's kind of like a stopgap between Django and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because people love Django. Django was a big deal when it came out, working with, that was the second film in a row he worked with Christoph Waltz, who won back-to-back Academy Awards, working with Tarantino and playing a villain in Inglourious Bastards compared to playing a hero in Django Unchained, and just showing how good of an actor Christoph Waltz is. Unfortunately, I don't think he's been able to capitalize on that away from Quentin Tarantino. Those are still his two best performances, in my opinion. Adaptive Writer wrote, that Blu-ray set was $202 brand new. Jesus Christ, was it really? I remember when that set came out in 2012, and I actually didn't buy it because I have Blu-rays over here that I already owned, and I figured out I already own, as the Blu-rays, DVDs for Tarantino movies come out, get upgraded. My favorite director, I'm always going to try it out. That's why it's funny that and sad that I don't have Inglourious Bastards from '09 on Blu-ray, on 4K Blu-ray, because I just don't feel like it's worth the upgrade yet. And I'm hoping down the line that we do get a brand new scan of that. Inglourious Bastards is one I think that could fit in the Criterion collection. I don't know how Tarantino feels about his movies in physical media. Obviously, he's a collector of like actual film. He's not like a big film, like physical media guy, but he's also not the kind of guy who's going to go out, and I've never really heard him talking about 4K collectors or anything like that. I've heard Christopher Nolan talk about that, but for him, he feels like he owns the New Beverly out in LA, so he owns his own movie theater. So he's really just a big fan of the movie theater experience. So I don't know how he feels about home media or anything like that. I feel like he would just probably say, hey, find a local theater that plays classic films. I don't think Tarantino makes too much money off the New Beverly, from what I understand, but I could be wrong on that. He really goes out there, and he's a promoter of seeing movies in theaters still. That's what he grew up loving, seeing blaxploitation movies with his stepfather and his mother. And that's what in martial arts films, like those low budget films, so you could just see that inspiration on him to this very day. Kevin L. wrote, have you seen the extended cut of The Hateful Eight, and is it better than the theatrical? I have seen that, and I got to be honest, like, it kind of bothers me that it's separated it into episodes. I really don't like that. I see what they were going for, and I do like what they add into the film. Like, that stuff doesn't hurt it at all. I just don't like that it's broken down the episodes. It's weird as this might sound. I like to watch movies in one sitting. I really don't like to break them up unless I absolutely have to. Like, I did that with The Lord of the Rings earlier this year, where the extended editions are like 4 hours long. And I'd watch like it's set on the 4Ks, it's on 2 discs each film, so 6 discs total. So what I would do is I watched the first film in one sitting, but then the other 4 discs I separated into 4 nights. I watched it after work, and I had to do it that way just because there's not enough time in the day, or else I would never in a million years do that. So I like to watch everything in one sitting, and the little breakup just because it's going to the next episode really did drive me nuts, and it's just my OCD doing that to me. Most people probably wouldn't complain about that, but that's what I got to go through. Shamrock Brawls, you have a Tarantino's fan of Psycho 2 and 3. Tarantino's a fan of Psycho 2 and 3. I did know that. Tarantino is a weird film fan, and I love the fact he tells you what he's a fan of. I think he says that Crawl is like one of the best movies to come out over the last 10 years. Like, he's a big genre film fan, a low-budget film fan, low-budget horror film fan. He'll knock, like, he's really hates the 80s, which, drives me nuts because that's, like, my favorite decade for film. But I get why most people, including him, don't like that. Adaptive Writer just wrote, I just saw Glorious Bastards and Django and Hateful Eight in the past month or so. All good films, but the Hateful Eight I thought could have been a little better, although I still liked all of them. Yeah, I the Hateful Eight I think what drives people like down a little bit on that is the opening is so beautiful in the snow, but then we spend the rest of the movie at what's her name, Maggie's haberdashery, and it becomes basically Clue in the snow. It's, let's solve this mystery, see what the hell is going on in this, who's the real killer. But it really does kind of drag the movie down for a lot of people, and I understand that. I personally really enjoy The Hateful Eight, but I had a great movie theater experience, something that a memory that'll live on with me forever from that movie. I saw it for my first vacation from my current job. Snowy day, snowy movie. I was the only person in the theater. It was snowing outside, but I had a truck at the time, so I was able to get there. And just watching a movie like that, it really just kind of added to the atmosphere of The Hateful Eight. So it just sticks out in my memory. Just I'm such a Tarantino fan. I was like, I'm not seeing this movie right now. I have to see it. Uh, Shamrock Balls wrote, Harvey couldn't throw his weight against the mighty Gump. Ah, you son of a bitch. You're right. He sure couldn't. Yeah, nothing was taking down Forrest Gump that year. Back-to-back wins for my boy Tom Hanks after Philadelphia, and Forrest Gump back-to-back years is incredible. But Denzel needs more credit for Philadelphia, and I just watched another Jonathan Demme movie because he directed Philadelphia. He also directed The Silence of the Lambs, and Jonathan Demme doesn't get enough credit. Fellow Long Island guy, rest in peace. But man, that guy just knew how to move the camera around. He loves his close-ups, and I was just watching Silence of the Lambs last night, and it's incredible what he was able to do. Adaptive writer Weinstein is a monster and should be buried under the jail. That being said, if it weren't for Miramax, we wouldn't have a ton of amazing films from all the Tarantino films and films like Kids. Yes, I 100% adaptive writer. It's a real catch-22. As much of a piece of shit as Harvey Weinstein is, he did own Miramax with his brother, and they did give us a lot of great films. Besides Kids, like he mentioned, besides most of the Kevin Smith movies, he also gave us Good Will Hunting, which is another absolute classic. So it's a shame that his name unfortunately can't be erased from history. But he did give us the movies that will stand the test of time. You just got to that's why I always say, separate the art from the artist. Like, I know it can be harder for certain people, but the art is what you're there for. And just try and think into yourself that it's more than one person who works on a movie. Like, there's writers, there's editors, there's producers besides the Weinsteins, or if you're watching a movie with an actor who did something really shitty, there's more than just one person who works on a movie, and you don't want to erase them from history as well. Kevin Elrell, do you think you know more about movies than Quentin Tarantino? I would love to sit down with him and go word for word. I think I know a good amount about film that I think that I could give anyone a run for their money. Tarantino, though, is a student of the game as well, and he's got a lot more experience in directing than me, which is if you have anything over 1 minute of directing, that's more than me. So I don't know if I know more than him necessarily, but if we're going like knowledge of the game, maybe I could give him a run for the money. I mean, if he seeks me out, the problem is he's one of my heroes. The Blue Corner wrote, never cared much for a Hateful Eight. Oh, I get that. I mean, I think that's one that's probably one of the more divisive ones in his filmography. I mean, it would still be in the bottom half for me, but again, I just love all of his movies, so it's really tough. Shamrock Balls wrote, Jeff Fahey's stories about him and Robert Rodriguez is very funny. I don't remember that story. I guess I guess I have to go read that. Shamrock Balls, I love The Hateful Eight. Yes, I watched it in the snowy settings, but the plot gets shredded with repeat viewings. Yeah, if you look too much into it. And then Shamrock also wrote, John, have you seen The Burning? That was the Weinstein's first ever movie, I believe. You told me to watch The Burning, and I'm waiting till October, Shamrock, for the Shocktober sale so I can grab that on 4K Blu-ray for half the price, because I do want to see that. And the cast, like, Jason Alexander, who else is in that? Holly Hunter. That cast is just stacked. But yeah, the Hateful Eight, if you do poke some holes in it, there is definitely some holes to be poked. It's got some issues. I know that the one thing, and it's just a moment of the time, this is really when Channing Tatum really, because coming out of the woodwork and becoming a more dramatic actor, and people were starting to appreciate him more after the 21 and 22 Jump Street, and people were starting to appreciate Channing Tatum more than just a handsome fella. But he feels very out of place in The Hateful Eight, whereas Walter Goggins, Samuel Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, what's her name? Bruce Dern. They're all just giving world class performances in this movie, and Channing Tatum comes in giving an all right performance, but a very out of place performance in The Hateful Eight, which is really unfortunate because I love that movie. I love everyone in it, but that really does kind of take me out of it, and it does get a little bit unfortunate. An adaptive writer wrote, "Separate the art from the artist." Same goes for Larry Clark, a monster. Yes, Larry Clark is an exploiter, but still create art that changed my life and doesn't stop me from having a complete Kids original media collection. Yeah, Kids is a fantastic movie. Did you get that new 4K yet, Adaptive Rider? Because I haven't yet, and I want to get that. Kids is one of those movies. If you see it at the right age, it does just catch you off guard. And I know we talk about it on here about Chinatown. Chinatown is directed by Roman Polanski. It's a top 10 film for me all time. You look up what Roman Polanski did, and it can make a lot of people completely say, I'm not watching Rosemary's Baby again. I'm not watching Chinatown again because I don't like that. Same thing with Woody Allen. Another thing with Woody Allen is I don't really get, like, when you see him in his movies, I just don't really love his movies. So it's a lot easier for me to not watch his movies. But that's the same thing. You got to kind of just separate the art from the artists. Like these guys, and they're human beings, and they're going to make human being mistakes. And some of them are just the worst people at anyone's job. The worst person in the world could work with you while the best person in the world can work with you. And, whatever they create, you just got to take it away. Because if you dive too far in, we could lose everything. So just try and take the art from it and just, try not to dive too much into these people's personal lives because it can be terrible. Have you seen the movie about Harvey allegations? Is that the documentary? I don't know if I saw that one. I haven't seen the movie that came out. I believe it was last year. It kind of just came and went, but I know it was about the Harvey Weinstein stuff. And for some reason, I guess people weren't into a dramatization of it because it really I can't even remember what the name of it was, but it was supposed to be a big Oscar contender, and it really didn't do anything. No one, it just I think it's just buried on Amazon Prime right now. I can't remember. I think that She's Talking or something like that. I know Woman Talking is different, but that movie, Woman Talking, was pretty good. But that one, the cinematography in Women Talking was horrible. That's the only thing that took me out. Adaptive writer Bruce Dern is an amazing actor too. Bruce Dern is fantastic. He's always been a great actor, and yeah, he's the father of one of the greatest actresses in Laura Dern. So, it's in the family. But Bruce Dern is a very underrated actor. I mean, I guess he's not underrated. People do bring up how good of an actor Bruce Dern is. Uh, oh, the blue corner. What's her name? Brewster. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I should have said what's his name, but yeah, I stumble through things sometimes. My brain like works like that, trying to connect the dots, and then eventually I get there. Are you getting It Follows on 4K? Kevin L wrote, yes, I will be. I don't know if it's out of stock right now, but I'm just waiting till I get a little bit more funds. But I will be getting It Follows on 4K because I love that movie. I want that second sight collector's edition. It is just absolutely gorgeous. Just can't afford it at the current moment, but I will be getting it very, very soon. Should come back in the stock. I go to Diabolic DVDs, so if you guys live anywhere that needs like international shipping, I highly, highly, highly recommend Diabolic DVD. I'm getting my Psycho 4Ks from them pretty soon. I just bought I bought that review of the Frighteners. I did that review here on the channel, the 4K collector's edition. Had to get that imported. So if they really do not overcharge on the shipping and taxes. So if you need something imported to you and they don't have it in your region, remember 4K Blu-rays are region free, so they'll play no matter what in a 4K player. The discs are hit or miss. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but if you want the film on 4K and you can live without the extras and the Blu-rays, definitely importing them and through Diabolic DVD. That's what I use. Frank Rodriguez gave me that recommendation, and so far they have not let me down. And then next up is Adaptive. I got both the Kids 35 millimeter film. Wow. Cell box set. Oh, hold on. Scrolled up. Sorry about that. And Lobby Cards box set, plus 2 regular Blu-rays, all sold out within a couple days of the official release. I opened one Blu-ray, the rest are still sealed. That's awesome that you have that. I can't believe you actually have all that. That's so cool. I don't even have that. I'm probably going to get the new 4K that came out recently, maybe do a review on the channel because I've always been a pretty big fan of the movie Kids and Larry Clark's films. I do think that the subject matter is always very, very serious. That one movie he did with James Woods, I remember being very uncomfortable with that one. And that's what they're going for. They are dealing with very real subject matter. Kids obviously was extremely shocking. I remember somebody coming up to me, my buddy Joey, in high school. He saw it for the first time, blew him away, and then he wanted to show me it, and yeah, did the same thing to me. That's the first time I ever saw Rosario Dawson. Most people, that's the first time I ever saw Rosario Dawson. And then obviously like the 25th Hour, Clerks 2. She's still floating around in a little show called Ahsoka, which I still haven't started because I don't have Disney Plus anymore. But yeah, that movie is just fantastic. Did you see Cobweb, Kevin Eller? Almost put that on last night. Just waiting to see if that's getting a physical release before I do that, because same thing with Talk to Me. I'm gonna get that in 4K and do my review that way before I could just stream it right now. Like I can rent it on VOD, but I think I'd rather get that 4K of Talk to Me. Did you guys see A24 is actually releasing that hand from Talk to Me? You could just buy it, and it's basically a pipe also, which is what it is in the movie from what I understand. Haven't seen the movie, but from what I understand, really cool stuff that they're doing. But I'm waiting to see if Cobweb gets a physical release. It hasn't been announced for one yet, I believe. I'm hoping it's not one of those movies that just never gets a physical release. There was another movie that got announced this past week from Fox Search. Well, it used to be Fox Searchlight. Now it's just Searchlight Pictures. That's just going to be on Hulu without a physical release. Always upset when that happens. It's starting to become a very common thing, and I hope that doesn't continue. I'm hoping that with Prey coming out on October 3rd, that we all, we start to get more Hulu releases like that, that instead of them being buried through 20th century films on just Hulu or on Disney Plus, because they are both owned by Disney, I'm hoping that we just keep getting the movies on physical releases, and that's the better option, in my opinion. The adaptive Rada wrote, the box sets were limited to 500 each, and the regular Blu-ray, there's no 4K of Kids, was limited to 3,500. All sold out. I think it was within 3 days. I thought there was a 4K for Kids. I guess I was wrong on that. Maybe it was just a new Blu-ray. But yeah, I think it was Umbrella Entertainment, if I'm correct. But either way, yeah, I saw that it got a new scan. That movie was in rough condition. If you remember the VHS of Kids, that's the first thing I ever saw it on. If you guys remember what that looked like, obviously shot gritty New York City. Plenty of I wasn't alive like in that. I mean, I was alive, but like I think I was 5 or 6 years old when Kids came out, and I didn't live in the city, but I've been to the city, and it really did feel like that, and it really captured that just so well on the film. I thought that was just incredible. Something that they did with Kids, just absolutely amazing. When is Barbie coming to 4K? Well, they announced this week that it was coming to 4K, but last time I checked, it doesn't have an official release date. But I guess if they're doing something similar like Mission Impossible, we had like no idea it's not when's it coming, when it's coming. Then it gets announced for October 10th, coming to 4K Steelbook and Blu-ray. Could be the same thing with Barbie. Barbie is what, Warner Brothers, so it's definitely coming pretty soon. My guess, November we'll have it. They're definitely going to have that out way before Christmas. Give people enough time to have that underneath the Christmas tree and the stockings where they're giving out for Hanukkah. That will definitely be out. My guess, middle of November sometime. Probably with a really nice steelbook. So I'm pretty excited for that. I don't know what the price is going to be. Prices right now for new 4K steelbooks are just absolutely absurd. $39 US. Don't know what it is in other regions. Barbie is out October 27th here in Denmark, so I would say a couple of weeks before that in the States. So he's got an official release date, so probably sometime in October then. So we're getting a little, like I said, getting pretty close to it. They would definitely not. I'm surprised about Oppenheimer. I would think Universal would want that out before the Christmas season, Hanukkah season as well, just because that's where the money's at, is getting it out before the holidays. So you would think that they would want it out before then as well. But I think Oppenheimer is going to be a lot harder to get on a disc. Universal does do great jobs with that, but just because the aspect ratio, the IMAX scenes that was made for IMAX, so that's a harder to bring the 4K. Although Mission Impossible, which came out 1 week before that, is getting its 4K release on October 10th. So it's all got to be around the same exact time, I would think, all ready to go. And then Adaptive Rider wrote, "Hey buddy, I'm like 20 minutes outside of Albany. I had a cousin come up." Cousin go down the wrong route, sex, drugs, at like 14 years old. Her life was a lot harder than mine. I'm definitely glad I turned my life around after that, seeing this film. Oh, that's awesome. That's a great story, Adaptive Writer. I'm glad that, you were able to, get your life in order, not go down that same path. You live in New York as well. I live in Long Island, so I'm not too far from the city. I'm similar situation. I had my brother had a drug problem for a very long time, but he was able to turn his life around as well. He got himself sober. He's been sober now for like 6 years. It does happen. Everyone has these stories in their families, but some of them end a lot tragic, more tragic than other stories. That's for damn sure. And it's always good to hear somebody come out the other side. Well, had a similar thing when another cousin happened. Um, Kevin L wrote, "Are you getting Kick Ass 2 on 4K?" I might get Kick Ass 2 and Kick Ass on 4K. As much as I love the original Kick Ass 2 is a step down, pretty much at every level. Kick Ass is a phenomenal film, definitely my style of film. Almost feels like a James Gunn kind of modern film, not like James Gunn trauma stuff. And speaking of James Gunn and trauma, I really have no idea what's going on with the trauma 4K Blu-rays for the Toxic Avengers, because I believe it just got delayed again. It was supposed to come out at the end of August, then they delayed it till the end of September. And from what I read recently, it got delayed again. So I have no idea when those 4K Blu-rays are coming out. I've tried to reach out to Trauma, but they are and this might be why it got delayed. They're still a very small, like family-owned organization. Like if you go to their website, it looks like the website was updated last in November of 2001. So if you guys remember what it looked like then, and if you don't remember, you can go and just probably look at their website right now. So it's a very small run organization, although I think somebody else was doing the discs, but it was being distributed by Trauma. So I'm not too sure what's going on with that, but it's just very strange. Um, and the Adaptive Rider wrote, "That's awesome. Your brother's doing well." Yeah, it is. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. Yeah, he's even a volunteer fireman right now. Actually, he lives in the same town as me, so he's a volunteer fireman for the town I live in. So yeah, he's definitely doing a lot better. It takes time, and you got to be willing to change yourself. That's the whole thing. And I learned is people don't get help until they want help. That's the whole thing. Adaver, that's great, man. Glad to hear it. Thanks, buddy. I really do appreciate that. So yeah, it's just it is good. People can change and definitely can turn their way around. They need a good support system. That's always the important thing. But back to what everybody was talking about, and kids really does do a good job of illustrating what real life is like. Movies. Movies are fictionalized for the most part. Even a movie that's nonfiction in documentary form, it's got an agenda that it wants to tell. It's very rare. I think that even from whenever network puts it out, but it's very rare that you get a documentary that tells both sides of every story. But especially in movies, people should never take film, even when it says based on true events, on 100% fact, because a movie still has to tell a compelling story. A story that might not be that interesting, but that has interesting key points. But you got to tell a compelling story for 2 to 3 hours. So you got to take some leaps and bounds in that. And it's just something that's to be expected. And Kevin L wrote, "Did you see The Last Voyage of Demeter?" I haven't, or Demeter. How do you pronounce that? Is it Demeter? I haven't seen that yet. I'm gonna see that definitely though. I'm very curious. It's just weird because the story that they're telling is a footnote in Bram Stoker's Dracula, or even any Dracula movie. We know that he took the boat over. We know that the whole crew died. It's just basically we know that Dracula gets there safe, which is interesting. But I did want to see it just because of the cinematography. It looks like it's a beautiful looking movie. I'm curious to see what they did with it. I heard got very mixed reviews. Just kind of looks like a summer horror film. It's bad. It did horrible at the box office, and it's crazy because they put out 2 Dracula films this year. The one with Nick Cage, Renfield, that came out earlier in the year, and then obviously this. They both did horrible at the box office. So Universal keeps trying to put out new classic films. They did a good job with The Invisible Man, and I thought they were right on the back on the right track with their old Universal monsters, and then they just kind of fell off again pretty recently with these 2 movies. But like with The Invisible Man a couple years ago, Lee Winnell's Invisible Man, I was like, that's what you need to be doing, because after The Mummy, things kind of just fell apart. That movie's a very rare miss for Tom Cruise. Didn't really work out. Renfield, the Blue Corner, I did see Renfield. Renfield is good. That shouldn't have done that build. Is it a great film, Renfield? No, but it's a lot of fun. Nicolas Cage is going for it, as Nicolas Cage always does. He's having a great time. He does such a good enough job. It's able to like save the film. There's some, not great special effects in it, but I mean, it's a fun movie, and it's honestly, it should have came out this time of the year in time for spooky season. So if you haven't seen it, I think it's on Peacock right now, and it's definitely worth it. And Peacock is one of the only streaming services that I'll always keep just because of wrestling. So anything that Universal puts out usually comes to Peacock pretty fast, sometimes even within 45 days. If it makes money, it might be a little bit longer than that, but that's where it's eventually going to end up. but I did think it was actually a really, really good movie. One that should have been appreciated a little bit more, in my opinion. Maybe it will get appreciated a little bit more down the line. Will you be buying the Disney 100 movie box set for $1,500? I dive into that in tomorrow's show. I will not be buying that. I don't know who could buy that. That is just ridiculously overpriced. I think it was overpriced if it was $500. It's 100 films. Actually, when you guys watch the show tomorrow, you'll hear me saying it's 100 discs. It's 100 films. I think it's like 157 discs altogether. It's Pixar and Disney animation films. The thing is that kills me and it's going to kill any collector who would have probably wanted that is, for the most part, you've already got the Blu-rays. Like, it's not even like it's just the 4Ks. They're Blu-rays, so you already have those scans on Blu-ray. Most people probably already own them. They're not going to go out of their way for the extra packaging or the new packaging of it. There's no new scan. I think that one film in that 100 films gets a new scan out of that. Makes no sense. Like, the definitive edition of Wall-E was put out by Criterion last year. I just don't understand the thought process here. I mean, you get those glass Mickey Mouse ears, but who wants that? I mean, you're going to have a collector who's got just plenty of extra money that they're willing to set aside. I just don't see it. Uh, so we'll have to see. Faith Williams wrote, "Hola, everyone. Hello, Faith. Welcome to the live stream." Faith, my co-host and slash wife of Let's Talk Physical Media. She will be on tomorrow's show. If you guys are new to the channel, Faith did the show with me for a while. Then she took a bit of a hiatus for the last month. Haven't been able just to line up our schedules despite living together and being married. But we are going to fix that. We are going to rectify the situation, and she will be back on this week's show. We already filmed it. I think it came out pretty damn good, if I do say so myself. Adaptive writer. Kids isn't a documentary. No, I know that. Kids isn't a documentary. Larry Clark gave Harmony or outline of the elements he wanted in the film. Harmony then wrote the script and made the subjects his actual friends and the actual skate and latchkey kids Larry Clark had been hanging out with in the park in New York City. He then ended up hiring and casting many for the film. I call it a docudrama. Yeah, no, I knew it wasn't a documentary. I was just kind of comparing it to a documentary, just in general, like how, just in films, like people kind of like take films kind of based on fact. I said even films based on like the truest of true events. It's still a film, so there's still going to be some liberties taking. I just think that Kids really did, like you just said, like is the perfect way to describe it as a docudrama. Larry Clark just did a phenomenal job of adapting all that and making it feel real. Like that's kind of like what New York City kind of felt like at the time, like through like the early 2000s. Not many movies can capture like what New York City really feels like. You have to have been there to really understand it. Like people love to come to New York City, like they want to see it. People who live in New York, I feel like always have the same thing. Like why? Like why? Like it's like very dirty and run down sometimes. Don't get me wrong, it's still impressive, but it's just like anyone who lives in like a big city area or near a big city, it doesn't impress them as much. And I feel like Kids really captured what it's really like to live in New York City in certain areas and what people really go through, especially now. Like back in, what was that, 96, I want to say? That was a different world then, too. Speaking the blue corner. Speaking of Cage, what is the last great Cage movie in your mind? Mine is Pig. Oh my god, you took the words right out of my mouth. Pig. Pig is such an underrated movie. That was one of the best films. What was that? 2021 or 2020? Pig. If you guys haven't seen Pig, check that movie out. Don't watch a trailer for it. Try and go into it as blind as you possibly can. I'm telling you, it's not the movie that you're expecting. And the ending to that movie will just leave you blown away. And just looking back on the entire screenplay and how well and smartly written that film is. I love Pig. That movie is fantastic. I don't know if we'll ever get a 4K of that, but we really should because it was very well shot. Kevin L asks, which 4K version of The Exorcist did you get? I really got, I don't know what I was about to say. I got the slipcover version, not the steelbook version, just because I pre-ordered the slipcover version, and that one's going to be here on Monday. When the steelbook version came back in the stock, I just knew I wouldn't get it late any earlier, so I went with the slipcover version. Despite not liking that slipcover, I'm hoping that I get a little bit more impressed with it in person. Probably not. I'm not really in love with the steelbook either. There's a nice collector's edition that I really would have wanted, but that doesn't come out till October 10th, and I want to get the review out for the channel. So I got the slipcover version. As long as the disc is good, we're in good hands, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. And the blue corner wrote, JFK is a nightmare. It's terrible. JFK is horrible to go to. I hate even dropping people off at JFK. It's just a ridiculous airport. New York has a few of those. Like we got obviously LaGuardia, which is in Jersey, not too far away. It's the easier option, just not as nice of an airport. Adaptive Rider, it's all good. I only mention it because many people mistakenly think it's also a hidden camera documentary. I didn't actually know people. I mean, I get that the way it's shot, it's very raw and gritty, which I really love. Not many movies can capture that feeling. A Bad Lieutenant, speaking of New York movies, kind of captured the grittiness, but you could still see it set up because of certain artistic shots, whereas movies like Kids don't have those types of shots. It's really going for that almost camcorder type of feel, and it really works for that movie. When is Kevin Alvaro? When is Kill Bill coming to 4K? So it's funny because we've read earlier in the year. I don't know what studio, I can't remember, got the rights to Jackie Brown and Kill Bill 1 and 2. And now we're getting new Steelbook Blu-ray versions of that later this year. But from what I heard, we're still going to get the 4Ks. So I think we're going to get Kill Bill on 4K next year sometime. Best guess, we get Jackie Brown in the spring, and we'll get Kill Bill in September and October of 2024. New scans of it in time for the 20th anniversary of Kill Bill Volume 2. That's my best guess. Adaptive Rider wrote, Kill Bill, Kids came out in 1995 and I absolutely captured the city perfectly. My mother worked in the city and took the train and commuter jets down regularly. Oh, wow. That's crazy that your mom was able to do that. And you guys lived outside of Albany, because I have family upstate, but nowhere near Albany. My brother-in-law, actually, he went to college in Albany, but other than that, I've actually never been to Albany or that far up in the north, as far of the New York State. I have grandparents and aunts and uncles who live upstate, but more kind of like floating like the East Coast line of upstate. If you know what I mean, I'm sure you know what I mean. The Blue Corner wrote, only been to JFK, stood in line for 3 hours. Ugh. I'm sorry, man, that you had to go through that, because the JFK, yeah, it could be a nightmare. And I'm already not a fan of flying, and going there, I mean, most airports are like, there's the smaller ones easier to navigate, but JFK has so many different hubs for so many different airlines. It just makes it so hard to get through. Adaptive Rider, the city was a very different place in the 80s and 90s, so we have a very different perspective. Now that 2003 was 20 years ago, TMT did a great job of capturing New York City in the 80s. Very dirty and, well, dangerous. Yeah, it's like I was born in the early 90s, so I missed New York City in the 80s and the 70s and 80s. But my mom was born in Queens, so she'll tell me stories about how the city was. My dad, for the most part, was actually, like, his family was like one of the first families on Long Island, especially like the east end of Long Island. But the city was always, I know that it was crazy in the 70s and 80s, and then like the 90s it started to kind of like turn around a little bit, and then obviously in the 2000s it became much more just what you would expect from a major city as far as businesses go. And then like now it's kind of like it doesn't get the best rep in the news, but every time I go to the city, I'm just always blown away by the speed of it, just because I live here on Long Island. uh and Kevin L wrote, is Matt ever coming back? Kevin, I ask Matt all the time to do videos. Like, I'm just like, hey, Paul, like, I saw TMNT, Mutant Mayhem with him. I was like, why don't we go shoot the review together? People will appreciate it. And he's just like, I don't really want to do it. Matt just really didn't like being on camera. Like, I love being on camera. I really do. I kind of feel like it was something I was always meant to do. But Matt really doesn't like it. Like, Matt still loves 4K Blu-rays. He'll call me all the time. We'll talk every day, still like text each other about like what 4Ks are coming, like that. But Matt just didn't enjoy, other than being on camera, it's like there's more to it. Matt never did any of the editing and anything like that, and it would just stress him out. So I don't know if Matt really wants to ever come back. I try, maybe I could push him in a certain direction. Like, I try and tell him that people still ask about him and what he's doing and how he's doing. You'd think that might push him a little bit, but it's just not his thing, and I understand that. It's not for everyone. A lot of people get nervous in front of the camera. They worry about how people perceive them. Understandable stuff. And it's just that he ran this channel for a while with me, and I don't know if he realized that people did like him. So that's the big thing with Matt. I don't think he understood that people like appreciate him. He always felt like it came off stupid. I mean, I made fun of him for that, of course, because we're been friends for 25 years. So of course I said he was stupid, but I didn't mean it. It's just he's my buddy. So I try and get him to come back, but it just doesn't look like it's gonna happen. Maybe though, you never know. Adaptive Writer wrote, you should come up for Saratage 3 racetrack. It's only like 3 hours or so outside the city. Definitely a great weekend trip during track season. That's awesome, actually, because I am a big racing fan. So I would love to see it. When you got Watkins Glen as a NASCAR fan, you got that up there as well, not too far from you. Adaptive Writer also, I was born in 1985, so I saw TMT 1 and 2 about 20 times each in the theater. Yeah, no, I get that. Sorry about that. My dog's Leia, relax. So let me shut the door. So yeah, I totally get that. I watched the original trilogy of the TMNT movies a million times when I was a kid as well. Absolutely loved them. I wasn't the biggest TMNT guy, but they definitely captured the city so well. Laugh a lot, horse racing, bro. Oh yeah, historic. You're right, Saratoga racetrack. I read that wrong. I thought you meant like a local like not NASCAR track, local short track. Yeah, I'm an idiot. I've never actually gone to a horse racing track, to be honest with you. We got in Long Island, they have the Belmont Stakes, not too far from me. That's the big racing track. Faith Williams, make sure no one is breaking into our house. LOL. Faith Williams said, funny story, which he's referencing to. Sleeping on the couch this morning. Me and Faith weren't sharing a bed. We have 2 dogs. So I was on the couch, one dog by me. She was in the bed with our big fucking German Shepherd Rottweiler. And this morning, some guy just walks through our back door and he's like, hello. And my one dog starts freaking out. So he turns around and goes out the door, starts knocking on it. And he's like, is this 32? Blah, 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 whatever block I live on. I was like, no, this is 36. And he's like, oh, okay, sorry. I'm like, you just walk through the door. You don't knock first. Like, you don't realize that there's people who might live here. I don't know what the hell was going on. What's going on at the house number 32 on my block. But yeah, some guy just decided to walk in my house and make himself at home this morning. Maybe I'll start locking the back door. I don't know. We'll have to see. Adaptive Rider. We have a few local short tracks for diet car racing. There's a lot of those up here, down here. Dirt car racing. I figured that's what you meant. Yeah, we have one dirt track on Long Island, and then we have one short track, a famous Riverhead Raceway, which is like 20 minutes from me. But yeah, there's a lot of local short tracks. Kevin L just asked, when are you starting Patreon? I'm thinking after spooky season, we're going to start the Patreon in November. I think that's the perfect time. Give it a couple more months. I wanted to get to 2,500 people before we started Patreon, and I think we'll definitely hit that after spooky season. Spooky season, I just have a lot of stuff planned. A lot of videos I want to show you guys, top 10 lists, Friday the 13th reviews, and a lot of 4Ks coming in the horror genre. Once you get past that, there's a lot of stuff coming out in November and December, but I really want to talk about once we get then we can start the Patreon. I have I'm working on the categories now with Faith. I also want to get Faith to do her own show here on the channel. I think she, if everyone could just persuade her a little bit, push her, I think we can get something else going there. So definitely looking forward to that. I guess I got to mute this, because they're gonna keep texting me. You guys can still hear me, right? Like the mic isn't muted. It's just I was just able to mute the volume on the computer. So, all right. So yeah, that's when we'll be starting the Patreon. So if anyone wondering what we do as far as like what that goes, that won't. When eventually when we get there, the regular channel won't change. We'll just have some new stuff behind. I don't want to change the channel too much. That's what we're working out right now. So it gives us about 6 or 7 more weeks for me and Faith to iron out the details, especially now that it's just me who officially just owns the LLC on Let's Talk. So me and Matt finished up that paperwork last week where he signed the business fully over to me. And, we worked out our deal and all that stuff. Just to give you guys a heads up, gonna be getting out of here in a few minutes. So if you have any final questions you guys want to ask, and we'll have a live stream, of course, next week as well. As long as I don't got anything to do on a Saturday, I'll always have a Saturday live stream. Eventually, we'll also be doing some more watch-alongs. That's all stuff that Kevin L was referring to. Like when we get to Patreon, definitely watch-alongs will be a pretty big deal. That's one thing that I really love doing. We might do some more of those wrestling watch-alongs where you guys can always ask, about physical media questions, movie questions, because that's the bread and butter of the channel, of course. Obviously, once we get to November, December, we're going to have a lot of movies coming out in theaters. It's been kind of slow with the theaters for some mainstream releases. Hopefully the strike doesn't slow all that stuff down. So that stuff's all going to be changing as well. If they don't start filming soon, next year's summer is going to get really hurt for us. We're going to have a really rough summer season as far as blockbusters come if they don't start filming by January, is what the studios are saying. And that could just be a bluff to get the SAG and WGA strikers to agree to a contract. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what they're saying. January is like that's a make or break time because apparently they stopped filming come November. uh Batman Balls wrote, I miss Batman 89 in cinema. Today I say missed loosely, lol. I'm guessing something happened, buddy. You didn't get to see it. I saw Batman 89 in the cinemas one time in my whole life, back in 2019 for its 30th anniversary. And I was honestly disappointed. They put it in a really crappy theater with a bad projector, and there was like 12 of us in there. Nobody was cheering. I was very underwhelmed. I thought it was going to be a bigger deal. I thought they were going to use the new 4K scan that also had just come out. So it actually looked better at my house with the new 4K disc. It looked bad. I was very disappointed by that. I'd never seen that movie. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And I didn't get to see it on the big screen. And I really thought it was going to be a big deal. And it really wasn't. It felt like I was seeing a screening of Batman and Robin, not Batman. So I was pretty much let down by that, unfortunately. Skid John is Shamrock Balls wrote, shit, John, weather is bad today. I see it myself a few years ago. It was the 4K scan. Ah, you lucky guy. I wish I would have saw the 4K scan. The weather is that bad there. Actually, it's funny because I don't know if you saw in the news, Shamrock, that Hurricane Lee like moving through the Atlantic. It's supposed to make like the wind and rain here, but today really bad. You see, I got the window open behind me. Not that bad. So I think they over exaggerated that a little bit. But had to like batten down the hatch. Just was a little bit windy, but nothing too crazy. So I'm guessing you're having some pretty bad weather over there where you are. Where I am, not as bad as they made it out to be. And then Secular Macro, no, Inglorious Bastards 4K just got here. Yeah, that's actually one of the 4Ks I don't have. Matt has the 4K. Used to do the channel, and man, we did a comparison with the old Blu-ray, and he didn't think it was worth it. So even though he bought the 4K Steelbook, I didn't buy it because I'm getting my fingers crossed that we'll get a brand new scan of it. To be honest with you, because that scan's pretty disappointing from what I saw and what I heard. So I don't have it yet. Maybe I'll buy it just to have it, just because I have everything else that's ever been put out on Tarantino as far as on Blu-ray and 4K. But almost, sorry. Coincidentally, was able to see Inglourious Basterds in theater opening day with a great crowd. Good experience. I actually saw Inglourious Basterds myself. That was the second film I ever saw in theaters. I said earlier that the first Tarantino movies I saw in theaters was Death Proof, when the Planet Terror, what was that called? The Grindhouse double feature with the fake trails. Actually, we're getting Thanksgiving from Eli Roth this fall. That was a good experience. That's the best time I ever saw Inglourious Basterds. Every couple of years, I get the itch to go back to it, even if it's one of my least favorite. I still really like that movie a lot, but it's not my favorite from Quentin Tarantino. But I did have a great experience in theaters as well. I like the scan, so maybe I'll have to give it another chance. Secular Monk, I'm not the biggest. I wasn't the biggest fan the first time I saw it with my cousin on an OLED, but you know what? First times, you got to always try it a second time. I always say, you never know. Caught it at the wrong time. Maybe you weren't in the right headspace. Kevin, are you getting my Bloody Valentine on 4K? 50-50 on that. I pre-ordered Natural Born Killers this week on 4K. I just bought the Blu-ray for my Bloody Valentine this past Valentine's Day. Now I'm waiting. I might wait a week because I think it's coming out on the 26th on 4K. Now Shocktober's coming up. That's usually the big Scream Factory sale. So I might just wait a week to see if they put it into the Scream Factory Shocktober sale. And if they do that, then I will definitely be picking it up in that sale. And, I might go back and forth and see, maybe just to get a review of it on the channel, because I do really want to see it again. I really think My Bloody Valentine, the original My Bloody Valentine, is a great horror movie. But I just grabbed the Scream Factory Blu-ray, so I don't know. I hate it when that happens. It's just always the worst luck. Shamrock Balls, we had a heat wave last week. Last week it was crazy warm, but since Friday it's been very rainy, overcasty, and starting to get cold. Never heard about the hurricane. Hopefully, that's the worst of it for you. Yeah, it was like they made a big deal about this hurricane because it went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in one day. That's how warm the water was. So all the climate change talk, and it just blew. But they said if it would have hit land, it would have hit land and been horrible. But it kind of just shifted out to sea. It'll probably hit up near Maine, where it's already completely downgraded, even below a tropical storm. So it won't be a big deal. But yeah, it was supposed to be a big deal. That sucks that weather has been pretty nasty for you over there, Shamrock. I'm sure you're not enjoying that. You know, your weather over there is like almost as crazy as like northeast weather, where it's just all over the place and just crappy all the time. Secure Monroe. Today's movie is 3 days of the Condor in 4K. So excited to see what Kino has in store. I want that 4K. I haven't gotten it yet, but I will get the 3 days of the Condor 4K just because I'm a big fan of that movie. That is a great thriller. One of Robert Redford's best. Just came out on 4K. I'll definitely be grabbing that pretty soon. I wanted to get that when it came out, but I figured I had to free up some funds, so it's gonna be a couple more weeks. Kevin L. wrote, I think they should have released Trick or Treat instead of Release My Bloody Valentine. If I go, yeah, I'm a little curious about that as well. I have Trick or Treats Blu-ray, but that would have been a better October release, and then giving us My Bloody Valentine in February, because there isn't many Valentine's Day movies in general. Just forget Valentine's horror movies. There's just not many Valentine's movies as it is. So most people, myself included, like to watch My Bloody Valentine in February. And then Shamrock Balls wrote 100% John and laugh out loud. It is. Oh, we get battered by the Atlantic like yourselves. Yeah, the Atlantic just produces so much crappy storms. And anyone who's on the edge of it, whether it be on the east or west, you're just gonna get hit brutally with a bunch of storms, and just storms just rolling in, just rain, especially with us with snow. We're getting into that season pretty soon. Daniel Garcia, Castella Daniel Garcia wrote, love True Romance. Oh man, True Romance is a top 20 all-time film for me. Absolutely love that movie. Even though Tarantino didn't direct it, the script is perfect. Tarantino and his script, though, did have a more downer of an ending, but Tony Scott gave it a much more happier ending, an ending that I really do appreciate personally. So anyway, guys, unfortunately, I do have to get out of here right now. So I will be back, obviously, next Saturday. Why would I say obviously? That's not obvious to anyone but me. But I should be back next Saturday with another live show. I'll update you guys throughout the week. Thank you, everyone who's been here with me today. I hope you guys enjoy your day. Get out there, tell your friends about us, as always. And just Secular Monk just asked I'll answer these two questions real quick before I get out of here. And he wrote, Shamrock wrote, later, John, have a good one. You too, buddy. So I'll answer these two questions from Secular Monk. Any news on the next Tarantino 4K? Last I heard, Lionsgate purchased the rights to Kill Bill 1 and 2, Jackie Brown. Would release it in the late 2023 or early 2024. So talked about this a little bit earlier, but Lionsgate is putting out new steelbook versions of Kill Bill 1 and 2 and Jackie Brown on Blu-ray this year. But there's still hope, and the belief is that they will be putting out Jackie Brown on 4K Blu-ray next year, and Kill Bill 1 and 2 next year on 4K. My best guess is we will get Jackie Brown in the spring, and we will get Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 sometime in September or October next year to line up with the 20th anniversary of Kill Bill Volume 2 on 4K. So that's my best guess. Maybe we'll put the new scan in theaters of Kill Bill 1 and 2 just to celebrate it being 20 years of Kill Bill. So that's my best guess. I just don't know for sure, because it is weird that they bought the rights to those movies and now they're just releasing them in new steelbooks with the same Blu-ray scans. But it just could be, hey, let's get these out there. We just got the rights to it. Let's get a little bit of money and put it towards the 4K. And Adaptive Writer, True Romance has the best monologue. Yeah, you're talking about the monologue from Dennis Hopper, right? With Christopher Walken. Yeah, that is one of the best monologues in film history. And then Christopher Walken snapping and killing him. I haven't killed anyone in 10 years or 15 years, and then he's still shooting him. I might have to watch True Romance tonight when I get home. I love that movie, but it feels like a winter movie to me, even though, half the movie's in LA. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it. I will see you guys around. Thank you so much for being here with me. Make sure you tell your friends about us, and we'll see you. All right. Tomorrow's Let's Talk Physical Media. Cheers, Shamrock. How do I close it? I don't see the end the stream button. Oh, that's it.